ReZero is a series that has had a masterclass of many episodes, with almost every single episode within the series coming away with some sort of meaning or message or piece of value. That is why for so long I swore off ever trying to, rank these said episodes and tried to deduce, a top 5 or a list like that. But today I will be doing quite the contrary and doing just that, ranking my top 5 best ReZero episodes, something I told myself I was never going to do due to how many of the episodes actually are genuinely just amazing. So if you like this type of content, if you enjoy ReZero, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and check out my membership link if you would want to. The link is in the description. It would help support me directly. But anyways, let's just go ahead and get right into the video, to which I want to say that I am ranking these based on the criteria of not just writing, but it is going to be a multitude of factors. So I'm rating these as episodes, all right? So it's not just going to be the writing. It's going to be the directing, the pacing, all these other facets to it. Also implications to the main story, lore that's revealed, twists. I feel like looking at it in just one facet, that being writing, would make the ranking a bit blindsided and would make some episodes get screwed out of actually having a placement upon this list, because I feel as if there are some episodes within ReZero that, maybe on story-wise implications might not have, the most prolific, impact, but, with the directing and the aim that they are going for are genuinely just amazing as an episode and as a standalone. So enough of all of that, let's get right into it. I'd like to start off with a few honorable mentions, the most prominent of those being Choose Me, which is an episode from season 2 part 2 and one of the peak climax moments of that season. This episode is directed amazingly. The attention is amazing. Subaru finally overcoming that conflict he had with Beatrice and finally getting through to her that he does not need to be any sort of specific person and reflect his dynamic with her, where within a sense Beatrice is a Hikikimori just like Subaru within her own way. Subaru just being able to get across to her that her life has value and she is not forever tied down to that gospel, forever tied down to that, endless hope that will never come, and she needs to just branch out and explore and risk having connections, even though one day she might be hurt when those connections are broken. It's all amazing. It barely just doesn't make the list for me. It's a 10 out of 10 episode though. Another one I want to mention for a bit of a different reason is Love Me Down to My Blood and Guts and The Warrior's Command. These are a couple of Garfield focused episodes, more specifically his fighting. The animation and sequencing that we see within Love Me Down to My Blood and Guts and the fight between Elsa and Garfield is one of the best I have ever seen with an anime, and I don't think I have ever been so enticed watching a scene within my entire life. And on top of this, I can't mention, I can't go without mentioning The Warrior's Command, aka the episode where he fights Kargan within season 3. This is some of the best animation I've ever seen and some of the most hype I've ever been watching a show. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw ReZero had this type and style of animation, because this is genuinely some of the best stuff out there by some of the best artists within the industry. As for the pacing and directing of these episodes, again, also really good. Some really important stuff going on, some really important climaxes. Just barely misses my list. They're also amazing. That being said, the last two honorable mentions I would like to mention is The Witch's Tea Party, aka, the end of season 2 part 1, where Akinda makes her declaration and, truly reveals her full colors and, the manipulation she was portraying towards Subaru, and Subaru has the conflict with all the other witches, and we see Satella and all of that stuff goes down. This, for the lore implications and stuff like that is amazing within its own facet. But furthermore, on top of this, Echidna's speech at the end of the episode is amazing, and it is some of the best voice acting I have seen within all of anime. And on top of this, the other one I wanted to mention was an episode from season 3, the most ancient and newest heroes of today. This is Subaru's speech within arc 5 and is just a full proclamation, full coming to circle moment in which Subaru is now confidently speaking of himself and addressing, the type of person that he was and how much he's grown, and that it's okay to be weak and, scared as long as you are connecting those feelings with the people around you together, and cumulatively you can bring forth strength and, be supportive and stuff like that. But yeah, all these episodes I just mentioned, genuinely amazing. I mean, not to mention a couple other amazing episodes that we see, such as, when Rem kills Subaru earlier within arc 2 of the series within season 1. All of this stuff is amazing, but they do not make my top 5. That being said, let's actually go ahead and get into what I think are the top 5 best episodes within ReZero. This was so hard for me to rank. You guys have no idea. So starting off at number 5, and what most people actually consider to be the best episode within all of ReZero, is going to be The Outside of Madness, aka season 1 episode 15, aka where Subaru gets his head cut off, and the honest, horrific climax of arc 3. This has some distraught stuff in it, and this makes the episode and makes the ranking list, not because of the writing or anything as such, but just because this is the definition of a directing masterclass for an anime. If I was ranking this list solely off of directing, direction, and pacing, this episode would be one. I have never seen such an absurd ending to an episode of an anime within my entire life. I truly think, like, on a directing terms of, we're speaking on like just solely directing, this is the best episode within all of anime, because this is just ridiculous. I mean, the build up within this episode, the countless, the voice acting, the screaming, the direction, the animation, how everything just ties itself together is amazing. And not to mention seeing Subaru and Rem's tragic story get unfolded and get twisted by a twisted maniacal, villain such as Betelgeuse is just something that is so horrific to watch, but just keeps you drawn in. I mean, the title for this episode could not be more fitting. The Outside of Madness. You are viewing this madness going on, and Subaru almost within a sense start to fake his own insanity to avoid directly confronting, the situation that he is being put into, in which we see him barely escape with Rem's mangled body, in which he has to walk all the way over to the mansion just for Puck to end it all again, as he screams, "Damn you, Betelgeuse." I mean, this whole episode, you could go on YouTube and look up reactions. It leaves people distraught. The only thing that really holds it back for me is the overall implications this episode has for ReZero as a series as a whole, as narratively speaking, and for the writing of Natsuki Subaru. This episode does not do as much as the future episodes I'm going to talk about. While it is amazing from a directing standpoint, it is within that aspect that leaves it at number 5 for me, because again, I am not looking at this from just one sole aspect. I'm trying to branch out and look at this from multiple facets and have a cumulative, idea of what could be considered the best episode. But it's not to mention that this episode is genuinely amazing, and ReZero, I would say, is worth watching for just to view and understand this climax alone. Anyways, let's move on to number 4. And at number 4, I am going to have to put what I consider a top 2 moment within all of ReZero Season 2, and that is going to be The Value of a Life, aka Season 2, Episode 8. This episode has everything. Like, if you were to show somebody an example of what an amazing ReZero episode is, this would be the episode in question. There is amazing writing, there is amazing gore, there is amazing death, there is amazing, lore drops and story building and stuff like that. Within this episode, this is when Subaru is able to finally reveal to the first person within the entire ReZero world that he has an ability, and that ability being Return by Death, something he has never been able to tell anybody before. And he is able to form and facet that connection with Echidna that, while it may be, superficial on the surface, because obviously Echidna is only doing this to manipulate Subaru into her own regard and try to get him to sign a contract with her, this is a moment for Subaru in which he is finally able to express himself, where somebody is finally able to fully connect with him. And the twisted irony and tragedy that this person that he is finally able to connect with is Echidna just makes it all the more better. And not to mention what happens in the latter half of this episode with, that guy right there. Holy, this is probably my favorite death within all of ReZero to this day. The voice acting is impeccable. Everything about this episode is impeccable. And this episode really, really, really feels like you're getting stuck. I mean, this episode encompasses the feeling of the first half of Arc 4 and the first half of Season 2 better than any other episode within the entire series, because it is at a point where it actually feels like Subaru is hard stuck within a video game. I mean, there is nothing he can do within this episode that can actually drive him forward and facet, what seems to be an endless loop that he is stuck in until he finally gets revealed what Roswell's motives have been and what is actually going on. Yeah, it's safe to say this episode is genuinely amazing, and that connection Subaru is able to give, and just that soul moment of voice acting that he is able to hold with Echidna's voice actor, and him finally be able to confess Return by Death and say it over and over again is just, it propels this up so high for me. Yeah, that's my number 4 one. Let's move on to the next. Next up on my list is going to be the hottest take that I have on this video, as in for number 3, I have self-proclaimed knight Natsuki Subaru. Now, people hate this episode. They despise this episode. If I remember correctly, it is actually the lowest rated episode on all of IMDb for ReZero, and that is because people don't understand what this episode is trying to show and what this episode is trying to represent. Episode 13 of ReZero is a culmination of everything that Subaru had been up to up until this point within ReZero. It is a culmination of all his issues, all his problems, whether that be his identity issues, his self-esteem issues. It is the boiling point of that being thrown over, and the fact and the start of what is going to be, the point of arc 3 and what leads us to later moments. We follow Subaru as he literally goes and makes every single possible wrong move that somebody could possibly make within this situation. I mean, whether that be disregarding Amelia's feelings, getting made look like an idiot in front of everybody within the royal capital, and taking his anger out on somebody like Julius, showing his true colors and his true envy for the people around him. This is just showing us the true colors of the Natsuki Subaru that was moving forward within the ReZero episode. And the ending argument within this episode, the argument between Amelia and Subaru, is one of the best moments within all of ReZero, and is one that is genuinely heart-wrenching and one that is quite honestly hard to watch. But that is the point. You are not supposed to be defending and supporting Subaru's actions here. He is supposed to look like a fool and like an idiot, hint the title, self-proclaimed knight, Natsuki Subaru. And it is this with every single wrong mood that we see, the start of arc 3 and the true start of Subaru trying to piece together and find out who he really is. Because it is within this moment that Natsuki Subaru, where he is yelling at Amelia and saying everything that he hates about her and all that type of stuff, where he is truly speaking inward and reflecting upon himself and his own selfish desires. I mean, it is a reflection of what we see within the very first episode, where Amelia tells Subaru straight up that she does not need his help and that she cannot repay him in any sort of way, in which Subaru just blatantly disregards this, treats it as more such of a video game, and decides that he is going to help her anyways. Without this moment and without this episode, ReZero would not be this series. It would be. Subaru's character growth and his development would not be nowhere near as impactful as it is, because without this moment, we don't see Natsuki Subaru at his low. It is the representation of how character development is not a linear process. Characters who have character development and just go straight up like that are not realistic. Subaru is somebody who has highs and lows, highs and lows. It's not an exponential function, and that is exactly what this episode gives us. It gives us Subaru at his lowest, and it starts the journey to what I consider the second best episode within ReZero, and that episode is going to be From Zero. If episode 13 of ReZero, aka Self-Proclaimed Knight Natsuki Subaru, was peanut butter, episode 18, aka From Zero, would be its jelly. I mean, you cannot have this moment without the other. They coincide together, as this is a full, accumulation of everything Subaru had been to, and him finally being able to talk with Rem and all the tragic events he went through in arc 3 and all the nonsense he went through, and finally being able to open up to somebody and confess himself and come forth about his true motives, his true goals, and the type of person he truly believed he was deep down inside, and why, that mindset and that problem and that knowledge is so wrong, because it is this mindset that is driving Natsuki Subaru to continue to loathe within his own self-pity that keeps him down and keeps him being ignorant to the world around him. And it is Rem that is able to open his eyes and it shows Subaru that he is so much more than this. Despite all of Natsuki Subaru's flaws and mistakes within the very first 3 arcs of ReZero, there was still somebody that he was able to help just by being himself. And even if this wasn't truly him and it was this act he was putting on, his expressive helpness and desire to help Rem within arc 2 came from his true self and his true identity. And for Rem, that is the Natsuki Subaru that she knows and the Natsuki Subaru that she loves. And even if Subaru can't recognize that Natsuki Subaru, he must appreciate what that Natsuki Subaru was able to do for somebody, regardless of all his flaws and mistakes and all the routes he went through. Rem knew that Subaru was never going to pick her, and for Subaru to have picked Rem would have been completely counterintuitive to the point of ReZero, and would have been Subaru just continuing those problems that he had within the first 3 arcs of ReZero, and that we see him actually try to attempt once again within this argument, in which he said, you know what, Rem, let's just run away, to which she has to say no, because that would be Natsuki Subaru running away from his problems yet again, just like how he ran away from the problems and his own identity issues within his own world, just like how he ran away from his problems within this world and was ready to just give up on everything, because Natsuki Subaru would rather give up fake insanity like we see within episode 15 and so many other things than actually confront who he is deep down as a person. So Rem finally being able to push him to that breaking point and, spin forward for Subaru and have him start from zero, from who he truly is deep down inside, using that identity of Natsuki Subaru, building that identity from the connections of the people that he makes around him, is genuinely just amazing and what I consider a top 2 moment within ReZero. I know some people like to say this episode is overrated because they hate Rem, and me personally, I'm not the biggest Rem fan myself, but it would be stupid to deny the impact that this episode had. And not even talking about it from a writing perspective, from a theme perspective, from the music within this episode, everything about it is just amazing. It is so good, and that's why it's my second favorite ReZero episode. But with all that being said, I still think there is one that is better than this, and one ReZero episode that I think is actually leads and gaps ahead of every single other ReZero episode episode up until this point, and that episode is going to be season 2, episode 4, Parent and Child. I can and will confidently say that this is the best episode within all of anime. This is the crux of Natsuki Subaru's character. I mean, we finally get revealed and it is finally shown to us the motif and the motive and, all of Subaru's backstory and his character that has been leading up to these decisions he has been making within this new world. Subaru's relationship with his father is that of a tragic one, along with that of his parents, one that is twisted within a sense, constantly growing up being compared to somebody who is so great and amazing and held in such a high regard within your community leads you to feel the stress and the burden of that. And while Subaru's father may not have been, the most famous person within the world, he was somebody that was a pillar of hope for, his community and the people around him, and someone Natsuki Subaru felt like he must match within everything. And that is why Natsuki Subaru never truly knew who Natsuki Subaru was, because growing up, Subaru felt as if he was a jack of all trade and had to be facilitated within every single thing that he did, whether that be running, being the funniest, it didn't matter what, Subaru had to always be the best, and when he wasn't the best, he would give up, run away from said subject, and try something new. The accumulation of this stress and this burden of being compared to somebody and knowing that there is somebody better than you just constantly looking at you and having people look at you and go, oh yeah, you're definitely his son, you're definitely his son, it made you feel like you need to keep that up. That's why when Subaru was isekai'd to the ReZero world, it was almost within a twisted sense a fresh of breath air for him. He knew deep down that he was never going to see his parents again, but despite knowing this deep down, Subaru, kept on putting on an act, and he felt as if he was thrusted into a new environment and, could finally be his own person without that comparison that burdened him within his old world, to the point where he literally stopped going to school, and to the point which he was almost masochistically wanting to have his parents tell him that you're not a good kid, you're not my son. For Subaru, this gave him a sort of twisted set of inspiration for him to drive his goals, but deep down, this was the problem. Subaru never changed as a person. He got thrown into that new world, still being the same Hikikimori he was within his own world. That is exactly why within the first 3 arcs of ReZero, Subaru is the way he is, because you can't try to put on this hero-esque identity and try to be this person when deep down you're not, when you haven't put in the work and the effort to do so. If your goals and motives are driven by selfish desires, then you're obviously not going to be a selfless person when things get, rough. And that's exactly why when things do get rough within arc 3, which I know this is a bit hyperbole, and Tappe uses this point a bit extremely, as Return by Death is a metaphorical representation of Subaru's own problem to run away and being forced to not run away and being forced not to escape. He does try to run away, and he goes to the point of literally faking insanity, like I mentioned earlier. Is this episode where we finally get some great character development from Subaru, in which he is able to, whether again maybe through the false memories that Echidna is implanting into him based off of what she saw within his mind, the false setting, the false reality, is able to get closure with his parents and, finally have that talk and have them know and have him know that, he doesn't need to be amazing. He doesn't need to be perfect. And that exactly what his mom tells him. It's not about how it starts or what happens in the middle. It's all about how it ends and the person that you ultimately become. Your highs and lows, at the end of the day, you are your own person. You carve your own path, and you, within your entire right and your entire being, are the sole person who has dictation over the type of person you want to be, the type of person you can be. So despite what's happened within the past, take what's going on within the present and build that so you could get a happy ending within the end. Not to mention the subtle symbolism that we see within this episode, whether it be Subaru's parents trying to push the peas onto him and the subtle parenting that they give to him, trying to hint at him to get back up on his feet, try to help him, go on walks with him, mess around with him and stuff like that. It's all done so amazingly. And there's stuff that's revealed later on within arc 6 and stuff like that that adds just even more context to, this scene and this episode and just all of it and what really happened before Subaru left. It just makes it all so amazingly. It's such a relatable episode, such an impactful episode, and one that honestly brings me to tears every single time that I watch it. On top of this, the directing and the aesthetic of this episode is genuinely amazing, and the build-up and the final moments that Subaru is able to have with his parents and how he's able to feel coming back from this is stuff that is just so good. As for the trials as a whole within arc 4, this is such a good concept and one that I'm so glad Tappe implemented, because it is genuinely just amazing. This episode is just amazing, and I want to do a video where I go more into in depth on it and give more of a collective thoughts, because right now, you know, I'm obviously just spewing off the dome, trying to give my thoughts on the episode and stuff like that. But I mean, I just want to sit down and discuss this episode deeper and, you know, go over bits and pieces from it, because it is one that is just so layered, so deep, and one where I catch a new detail every single time I watch it, whether it be Subaru's bedroom or, you know, the setting where he grew up in, or the flashbacks and stuff like that. It's all just done so amazingly and so reflective of what the character he represents within the ReZero world. But yeah, that about does it for my top 5 ReZero episodes, and why I think Parent and Child is not only the best episode within ReZero, but why I think it is the best episode within anime in general, as it is the epitome of our main character, Natsuki Subaru. And for you anime onlys who, you know, haven't read Arc 6 and for what's to come, just know it only gets better here, because I would say personally that there are multiple better moments within Arc 6 that climax, you know, the moment of Parent and Child. Although I don't know if there'll be a better episode, as they are just moments, and a moment doesn't determine a whole entire episode. For that about does it for the video. Let me know what you guys think. I also did want to mention the fact that, you know, the lack of season 3 episodes upon this list. I think season 3 of ReZero as a collective is very good. I think as a season, it is the most consistent with the least amount of highs and lows. It's all around just straight up good, like that. But I also think this makes it lack from having the highest peaks, and I do think White Fox butchered a bit on the story side. As for the animation and all those other aspects, I think this is the best ReZero has ever looked, personally. But it also is due to the fact that season 3 is just arc 5. I mean, if a whole entire season is dedicated to one arc, and that arc is not super long, which arc 5 isn't, as within season 2 we had it dedicated to arc 4, which was a much more pivotal arc within ReZero, and season 1 obviously contained 3 different arcs. You know, obviously the highs aren't going to be as high. And season 3 and arc 5 is much more of an exposition arc that is meant to show how our characters have grown and shown their strengths and shown how they've developed, which is why I had the most ancient and newest heroes episode mentioned within this list. But overall, what do you guys think? Let me know your thoughts below. Let me know what type of videos you want to make next. I know I had taken a bit of a break from this analytical type of content, but I want to get back into it because it is the content that I truly enjoy making. If you want me to talk about any other series, let me know in the comments below. And anyways, that about does it for the video today, guys. Peace.